This is my MX-5 track car, and it goes pretty fast. It also stops fairly well for the most part. You see up front, nice big AP racing calipers. However, in the rear, I'm still running the original OEM brake caliper, which is a problem in terms of brake bias and also the balance between front and rear piston size. So I'm going to fix that today with this StopTech brake kit. Yes, so this is my new StopTech brake caliper. I bought the kit from V8 Roadsters recently after doing some homework on why or how I could improve the braking on my car. I realized I was running a really front heavy brake system, that being the front brakes and the caliper size and piston area were very large compared to the rear and no longer had the same balance as the original setup. After doing some homework, I realized I probably needed to improve that balance and bring some braking force back to the rear wheels. Hence why I've purchased this kit. It was not cheap, over $1,500 to $2,000 or something, I can't remember exactly. I'll put the dollar figure here somewhere, but when you consider that I paid in Australian dollars, obviously, but purchased from the US, plus shipping, all of that blah-de-blah, here's how much it ended up costing me delivered to my door in Aussie dollars, and here's US dollars, and here's euros for all of you people on the internet who want to know how much things cost. But cost aside, and my very tiny, measly, lightweight wallet aside, let me show you everything that comes in the kit. So realistically, what you're seeing here, if you know how braking systems work, is probably no surprise. Two sets of calipers, interestingly marked left and right, I'll get to that in a moment. Some fittings to make all of those bits work, so you've got your bleed nipple plus what looks like an AN fitting, presumably for the brake line, and a little dust cap. We've also got a couple of brackets. They are symmetrical, or they're the same, they mirror one another, so there's not like a left and right-handed bracket, which is nice to see. And the necessary hardware, so 2 bolts to obviously attach this to the car, and then 2 bolts to attach the caliper to the bracket. Washers, presumably for said bolts, and some brake lines. Obviously the one for the right-hand side, or in my case the driver's side, given I drive on the right-hand side of the car, includes the distribution block to replace the OEM one, and the other line, obviously the left-hand side of the car. Curiously, I'll get to this once we actually do the install, but curiously this line comes with a AN fitting of some form that looks to be the same or very similar to this one here with the copper washer doesn't want to come off. They look very similar. Not exactly the same, but similar. So I don't know if that's sort of just a situation of having a kit where some parts are sort of paired with some other parts, and you know, maybe this comes from StopTech, these lines come from V8 Roadsters, you marry them all together, you end up with 2 fittings, or if for some reason I'm supposed to use all these components, I'm not entirely sure. Probably would help if we had some instructions. Sadly, no instructions in this kit. Second thing I found interesting is they're marked left and right, little stickers on here, and if you put them upright with the letters in the right direction, then they are mirrored, so for some reason they're marked left and right. Again, I don't know why, because they're, I've compared them, and as far as I can see, on the face value, they're exactly the same, other than the sticker. Obviously, if the fittings were pre-installed, then that would make sense, because on the right-hand side, you want the bleed nipple on the top, and if you were to install this on the left, you'd have the nipple on the bottom, which is not what you want. But given the nipples aren't pre-installed, and I have to install them, and it doesn't explicitly say where to put them, I just know that on the top is the answer. I don't understand why they're handed, but they apparently are. But fundamentally, that was the kit. It came mostly well packaged. Each of these calipers came in their own box like this, so this is the StopTech box. I've got another one here. The unfortunate fact though, is the caliper comes floating around in this box, just like that, which is really crap. Now, as far as I can tell, this plastic was supposed to be covering the caliper, something like that, and holding it in place, but it wasn't. When I got it, the caliper was just sitting in here, in this box, like that, floating around. Just put some padding in there, some packing nuggets or something, I don't know. So, a bit disappointing. That's how they turned up. All of the bits came, they all came fine. Nothing's damaged, but packaging could have been better. A few question marks. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with the extra fitting. I don't know why there's left and right-handed, but as far as I can tell, it probably doesn't matter. And I assume that one of these fittings, whether it's this one or the one attached to the end of the brake line here, one of those two I'm probably not going to need to use. That's all the bits. Obviously, to go with that, I bought some new brake pads. So these are PFC 11s. They're not exactly a big pad, particularly compared to the original MX-5 one. They're probably a similar pad surface area, maybe a little bit smaller, but obviously a bit more bite force. We've got twice the piston size pretty much here. And then lastly, some brake fluid. This is actually not enough because I'm going to have to pretty much bleed the whole system, but you get the idea. This is the stuff I've been using lately. It still does get hot, particularly on the front of the car where it boils after about 5 or 6 laps, but yeah. We need some brake fluid. That's pretty much everything that needs to go on the car. Let's get to install. Rightio, let's get to work, pull some things off, and let's see how this all fits up. I've got all the right-hand side stuff here. I'm on the right rear wheel. We'll do the install, and I'll keep you across things as we go. Alright, now, removing that old caliper isn't too hard. It's a single 10mm slider pin basically, and then the whole caliper comes off. That's good if you want to get to your pads. My pads look pretty good. The reason they look so good is because that caliper and the piston are so small that these bits are hardly doing any work. Now, we've also got to remove the caliper bracket, which lives up in here, so let's get to that now. Of course, I installed this stuff, or reinstalled I should say, not that long ago, when I upgraded to these rear Kaiser's. So this brake system has sort of been not necessarily maintained, but refreshed a little bit recently-ish. You'll notice I've left the caliper hanging on the cable on the brake line. Normally that's a big no-no. In this case, that brake line's actually damaged. It was one of the reasons I was looking at doing this kit anyway. And we're going to replace that, or I'm going to get rid of that line, throw it in the bin. This brake distribution block up here gets replaced. And that's one bolt. That's the second bolt. Now, logically, that's kind of physical removal of the caliper complete. Although it's still hanging onto the car at the moment because of a couple of things. Firstly, yes, the brake line, which I obviously have just mentioned. But secondly is this second cable, which is the handbrake cable. So the rear caliper on the MX-5 includes a component that activates or works with the handbrake. I'm going to lose that when we upgrade to the Stop Tech kit. There's just no handbrake anymore. It's an offset, it's a con to this kit, so to speak, but there's a weight saving involved in doing that, and I'm getting better performance, and I don't really need the handbrake critically. It is helpful, it's handy for loading the car up on the trailer, rip the handbrake so it doesn't roll away, but it's not used during everyday track days on this car. I wouldn't use it when I park it in the pits or anything, because it's just sort of known that using handbrakes after long hot sessions in the car are a bad thing for heat retention and heat soak into the caliper setup, the pads, locking pads to the rotors, all of these sorts of problems can occur. So really, I only use the handbrake for like rolling around in the garage or loading the car up on the trailer. Therefore, I've decided I'm just going to get rid of it. So we need to disconnect this whole kit, disconnect that brake hose, and then this bad boy is gone. Okay, a couple of things. First of all, I took the brake rotor off and gave everything a bit of a wipe, which is always a good idea. And secondly, don't forget a bucket to catch any errant brake fluid that gets away from you, because you're going to be undoing brake lines. Now, if you're unlucky and you've got a sort of an older car that hasn't been fettled with in a long time, then you might find that your OEM brake hose, these hard lines, the fittings struggle. There we go. Fittings struggle to come loose. Thankfully, I've done them up and undone them a few times, but you always need to use a flare nut spanner like this
If you don't do that, you may end up stripping out these fittings. If you really get stuck, vice grips or channel locks, I think they're called in the US, they seem to be the answer to hard or very tight brake hose banjo fitting thingies. Well, not banjos, whatever they're called. But that's it. That's the deinstall, removal, 100% complete. So we can get to the reinstall. First thing I notice is the distro block has a single bolt instead of double, which I find a little bit annoying. Like, just why not have two bolts? Why only have one? Alright, so we gotta try and wrangle this into place. Unfortunately, there's no like really cool trick to doing brake fittings up that disc fast, because you're at the mercy of how far the spanner can go. You have to take it on and put it off. There's no like ratcheting open-ended spanners out there. At least there probably is, but I don't have them. So you gotta go half a turn, take the spanner off, put it back on. A little bit cumbersome, but there we go. So they're not tight, but snug enough. Now, I don't know why we've only got provision for a single nut rather than retaining the two nuts that were on here originally. Perhaps the NA has a single nut? No, it doesn't. It's double as well. I have no idea why they've done it this way. So tight, but not completely tightened yet, just to get everything in place. And effectively now we can install the bracket. Again, one of those annoying things with this kit and the lack of instructions is it comes with a bracket. We've got obviously two holes for the caliper, and having put them up against the caliper itself, it looks like it goes that way as opposed to somehow that way, because obviously the holes don't line up. And there's obviously a relief here, this curved piece, to allow it to fit around the sort of the shape of the piston on the caliper. So clearly it goes that way. What I don't know is if the bracket goes on this side, or this side, or this way, or this way. Like, some instructions or a picture would be helpful. I'm going to have to guess by putting this on. I'll throw a wheel nut on quickly so that just so that it doesn't move around, and I'll loosely attach the bracket to the caliper. Again, as I say, there's two ways I could do this way or this way. I don't know which way is the right way, so we'll go with option A for the moment. And now what we need is we want our rotor effectively in the center of the caliper between the two pistons, so that when they're at, once your pads are worn, you want your pistons to be out about the equal distance. So obviously you don't want the rotor to be offset to one side or another, ideally right down the middle. So I've got to work out which side this bracket goes. I might have to flip it upside down. Let's have a poke around underneath and see. So it looks like this needs to rotate 180 degrees. Okay, rotated. Let's offer up now and just check. Now the answer is that's better, but it still seems a little off. I'm wondering if the included washers are kind of a shim to go here to space the caliper out a little bit. So that's definitely looks to be the case. So what I'm going to do is remove the caliper from the bracket. I know the bracket goes in this direction, so the logo faces out so I can see it. Let's pull the rotor off. Now the kit came with enough washers, or four washers per side. I know I can't use two of those washers on the caliper side, so that, as in this bolt here, I can't use a washer with that. So the fact that there's four suggests to me that they are expecting you to need to use them potentially here or at least on the bolt that attaches on this side. So let's go with a single washer here and see how that fits up. So essentially bolt in through the back, washer, and then the bracket. Get the bottom one going as well, so bolt, washer, and bolt it up to the bracket. I'll throw my rotor on. How our caliper fits up. There we go. Now everything's done up. Not super tight, just snug enough to, I guess, validate and mock up and confirm it's all working. If I grab the camera and bring you in, you can see now how that centers. The rotor is definitely pretty much bang on center with the caliper, and so that single washer lives in there between the upright and the bracket, and that seems to have positioned it so it's perfectly bang on center. You've got a nice little clean air either side. It's quite tight by the look of it, but seems to be fitting in there well. So that's good to know. In theory, other than fitting up our brake line, chuck in some pads and she's done, and you're obviously bleeding and stuff. But yeah, look, that's pretty much as simple as it is. I'll quickly finish off the job and bring you along, or let you know if anything surprising comes up. Right here, so everything's buttoned up now. So we've got our brake pipe, our hard line going into the distro block. We've got our braided soft tube coming into the back of the caliper. I've affixed the fitting as I have guessed that it needs to go together. So there was an extra fitting that was pre-attached to the brake line, which I've omitted. I've instead used the fitting that came with the caliper that has a copper washer. So that's bolted into the bottom side of the caliper. That's where our brake line comes into. Then up the top is where I've attached the bleed nipple. I've reattached and tightened up all of the bolts that attach the caliper to the bracket and the bracket to the hub. I've applied a little bit of this copper grease stuff to those big bolts because I don't want them getting all toasty, and sort of, given it's aluminium, you don't want them binding and then they can kind of break the threads, damage the threads on the alloy. So use a little bit of that just to help keep everyone happy. The only thing I haven't done is installed my new pads. So let's see, that should be really easy to do. Let me see if I can show you how to do that. So, focus big boy, we've got 2 pins with little R clips, kind of the same ones you get on your remote control car. The pins seem to slide out pretty easily, and our pads go in like so. It seems to be pretty pain-free. And there we go. Sorry, I hope you weren't out of focus for too long there. Slide these guys in, as simple as that. We can reattach out. Short of some brake fluid, that's the Stop Tech kit. Mad. Now the only thing not addressed here is the cable for the handbrake. In theory, I could just tuck it up there and forget about it. But obviously I'm not going to do that. I'll get under the car at some point, remove this all the way back into the cabin, remove the handbrake handle out of the cabin as well. But we'll get to that another time, not to bore you today. This is pretty much installation complete. Our old caliper has been removed. Still a very capable and useful caliper. They're an upgrade on a lot of earlier model MX-5s. This is the Sport Brake NB caliper, so the one that comes on all of the Aussie delivered facelifted MX-5 NBs. But otherwise, yeah, look, it seems to go in okay. A few little mysteries needed to be solved to get it all working, but it seems to have gone together fine. Well, frustratingly, we were robbed by having an answer on how long it would have taken me to install this, because the bloody camera died at some point, so I don't know exactly how long it took to get this in, but it was hardly any longer than it took to remove that gear. Everything's done up, everything's installed. That's it for this side as well now. And well, look, that's the install. The actual fundamental installation process is really pretty straightforward. I can't imagine it being any different to a relatively run-of-the-mill pad and disc swap. It's not that much different. If you've upgraded from, you know, early 1.6 brakes to later 1.8 brakes, then this is hardly any more effort. There are a few things that I'm a little bit disappointed about. Obviously, when you're installing OEM for OEM, it all just bolts up pretty much perfectly fine. In this case, however, there are a few things that I guess were, you know, grey areas that needed some clarification. Firstly, the brake lines came with these extra fittings attached, which I just didn't use. It'd be nice of them to either omit them and just not, you know, reduce the chance of confusion, or just, I don't know, include in the instructions, hey, the brake fittings come included on some brake lines because we buy them as a kit, but you don't actually need them for this particular application, or something like that would be helpful. Secondly, it came with washers, which from what I can deduce and the way I've installed it in this case is I've used a single washer in between the bracket and the hub to get the caliper centered on the disc. I hope that's the correct installation. It certainly looks like it to me. That's what I've done. But otherwise, fundamentally the kit went together fine. We know StopTech is a quality brand. We know the caliper is going to hold up well. It's probably going to be more than enough rear braking for this car now. And fundamentally, I have zero concern pretty much, maybe not zero, but close to zero concern that the caliper itself is going to hold up well in this case. I think perhaps the kit isn't quite perfect. Maybe there are a few little things that needed some clarification, or maybe just, you know, some instructions to remove any of the grey areas, so to speak, and any of the potential hiccups, potential question marks. I can't tell you exactly how well the kit performs, how it feels, or if it's different to the old setup, because right now tracks are closed. And also, it's difficult to give a like-for-like difference, even if I do get to go drive the car, because I've also changed the brake pads. The front and rears are both now running PFC rather than Hawk, so there's a few variables here that have changed, not just the rear calipers, but I'm sure nonetheless there's going to be a much better balance between front and rear. I'm hoping the car will pull up better. I'm hoping the fronts will last a bit longer and be able to, I guess, not be burdened with so much load and therefore not get so hot so early, and perhaps I'll be able to get more laps out of the car when I'm really pushing it. But overall, look, it went together fine. The installation, the removal and installation process is relatively pain-free. There is a few things that still haven't been done. Obviously the brake fluid, as I mentioned, but also I've got the existing, or the original hand brake gear still in the car. So the kind of cables that run under the body of the car up to the handbrake in the cabin, that all needs to get removed. So yeah, overall I think you can probably surmise that for the most part, the kit is flawless. It comes with some reasonable hardware. It comes together. It all installs relatively fine. Perhaps the packaging and instructions need some improvement. There's a few little vagaries there that I'm not 100% sure on, but it all looks to be installed fine now. So, proof is in the pudding. When the car gets out on track and I can actually belt the crap out of the thing, put some heat into the tyres, make the brakes work, we'll find out how good it is. I'm expecting pretty good things. I think will pair well with the APs up front. I know Ryan Pass runs pretty sure this same rear kit, although probably a big StopTech up front. I'm running the APs. They're probably similar, the front for front. So I suspect this will be a pretty capable kit. Yeah, stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you're considering this kit, I bought it full price with my own money from V8 Roadsters directly. There's a few other places you can get the kit from. I got it from them because it doesn't come with a set of brake pads. There are a few other places that offer the kit with brake pads, but the pads they had on offer didn't suit my application. So I went straight to V8 Roadsters. I don't know if the other kits, i.e. the one, maybe Goodwin Racing or someone sells a StopTech kit, if they use the same hardware, the same brackets, or if it's just the same caliper and their own bespoke bracket. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe theirs comes with instructions. I'm not exactly sure. If you do have answers to those questions, put them down below. If you think I stuffed up anything, put it down below. I probably did. I did remove the little stickers on the calipers that say remove before installation. Yeah, that's it. That's the outro. Thanks. See ya.